This is Metropologan back with Sharon Van Etten and the attachment theory. I last covered Sharon Van Etten back in 2019 with the release of the underrated Remind Me Tomorrow, an album which saw her working with producer John Congleton to upscale her delicate indie folk into dark, textured synth rock. Now, this expanded sound palette crucially kept Sharon's singularly evocative voice as the album's central focus, signalling a turning point in Sharon's career towards larger sounds and denser instrumentals. She followed that album with 2022's We've Been Going About This All Wrong, blowing up the arrangements to the most grandiose they'd ever sounded, unfortunately to mixed results. Where Remind Me Tomorrow had successfully expanded Sharon's typical arrangements, incorporating nostalgia-infused synthesizers and fuzzy guitar tones into her melancholic performances. We've Been Going About This All Wrong further inflated that sound, but lost some of the finer points in the process. It wasn't exactly clumsy, but it missed the high mark that Sharon had set and served as an unfortunate step down, even as it saw Sharon progressing as a musician. So, after another 3 years, what do we get from Sharon Van Etten and the attachment theory? Well, the nostalgic synths of Remind Me Tomorrow are back and more prominent than ever before, often taking the lead over guitars which play a more textural role as Sharon incorporates more instrumentation into the mix. In fact, the name of this album signifies the surprising formation of a band going against the grain as many of her peers are striking out solo. The band has a good dynamic, there's a coherence to the instrumentals which Sharon's previous album lacked, and the bass lines in particular have never sounded so good, with Devra providing a level of groove that Sharon's music has never offered before. The production is mostly done in-house, and the band do a fine job of ensuring their respective instruments sound defined and clear, even on the album's denser moments. Although there isn't much variety between the instrumentals, the band's capture of 80s nostalgia will please hungry indie fans, especially those that are longing for that early New Order sound we all love. Now, whilst Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory is not a challenging record, and nor is it a particularly great leap forward from the last two of Sharon's solo albums, there is a marked change in her writing which seems to reflect the earlier shortcomings of her last album. Where We've Been Going About This All Wrong lost some of the details and instrumental subtlety of prior releases, the Attachment Theory repeats this same mistake, this time in its lyrics. Now, I can see a lot of new listeners finding the album's catchy refrains to be compelling, but I can also imagine many of Sharon's longtime fans will feel underwhelmed by the gaps in her writing and her move to a more conventional new wave sound. For me, well, I'm torn. On the one hand, I do miss the signature details which define some of her best tracks on Remind Me Tomorrow and 2014's Are We Here, albums which place Sharon front and centre of all of her songs in a way which isn't always true here. Sharon has clearly styled this album as separate from her solo work. As such, it stands to reason that she would step away from the anecdotes and reminiscing which have previously characterised her writing, embracing a broader scope of online issues and relatable relationship woes. On Idiot Box, Sharon contributes to the contemporary canon of internet skepticism in pop music, following on from more acute and entertaining criticisms like King Cruel's Cellular and MGMT's T.S. Lamp. Now, whilst I can see this working for a lot of people, for me it just exemplifies my main issue with this album in relying so heavily on the appeal of its soundscapes without substantiating its often underway lyrics. It's frustrating, especially when the thematic backdrop is here, but the engagement just isn't, with Trouble best exemplifying this. Sharon refers to the bubbles we live in and her desire to bridge the increasingly divided political climate, but her exploration of the theme is limited to a brief allusion to abortion rights, which she doesn't develop or expand upon. Elsewhere on Something Ain't Right, Sharon references the Talking Heads classic Once in a Lifetime, although this only succeeds in painting this album as the new wave pastiche that it really should transcend, but sadly often doesn't. That I find the album's most personal lyrics to be the most engaging, with the lead single Afterlife finding Sharon grappling with her own mortality after befriending a sick fan who died. It's a touching track that stands out precisely because of its engagement with the more intimate experiences which Sharon has always excelled at capturing, and it's the same reason why I love the album's closing track, I Want You Here. Its lyrics are simple but compelling, and the song's crescendo is undeniable, its slow building synths and urgent drums picking up a real swell over Sharon's evocative cries, of I Want You Here, even when it hurts. It concludes a frustratingly underwhelming album, one I wanted and expected to like a lot more than I did, despite my appreciation for many of the individual elements which comprise the record. Overall, it's a 6 out of 10 for me. Not a bad album by any means, but one that I'm sorry to say let me down. It doesn't stack up to her best work, nor does it take the risks of her last 2 albums, landing pretty flat for me overall. Anyway, this has been Metropologan, and I'll catch you at the next stop.